Welcome to 32 Bar Cut the Show, a show where we talk with our friends about what it's like to be a performer. Today on 32 Bar Cut the Show, we are sitting down with Diana Huey.
It's time to welcome on our guest, my favorite by far, a theater star, Diana Huey, on 32 Bar Cut.
You may have seen her flipping her fins in the national tour of the Little Mermaid or singing her heart out as Kim in Miss Saigon. But today she is sitting down with us to talk about her life as a performer. Welcome to the show, Diana Huey.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you here. So excited.
That was an amazing intro.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
Austin wrote that, and it's our little way of introducing everybody into the show and the life of theater, if you will.
It's perfect. It's perfect. That's amazing.
Thank you. So, my first question, I hope it doesn't sound too loaded, but I really do mean it. How are you? How are you doing? How are you navigating this new way of living life off of the stage?
All things considered, I am doing well. I can't complain. As long as I always said from the very beginning of all of this craziness was as long as my family is okay and, we can keep a roof over our heads and still eat food and, get through this. That's all I ask for the people I love to be safe and knock on wood. So far, that's, they've been good. My parents have just gotten vaccinated. My dad got a second shot. My mom's getting her second shot tomorrow. So I'm like feeling a little better. But it's actually been this really great silver lining. My boyfriend is a musician and we never get to see each other. We've been together for about 7 years, and we last year it just started becoming a joke because we would spend literally 24 hours together before someone else had to bounce. A year ago, last week or something, it was like, oh, okay, he picked me up from this show at the airport. So he picked me up at at LaGuardia at this time. And then 24 hours and 1 minute later, I dropped him off at JFK the next day. And we were like, bye. And that happened so often that we were like, how do we keep booking gigs that there is 1 to maybe 3 days if we're lucky that we're together. So suddenly we just spent almost an entire year together every day. And it's been like really amazing. Lots of cooking, lots of eating. When we get back to work, I'm just going to have to really get on a health kick. And plant babies galore. I've been adopting a lot of plants. So, all things considered, I'm happy, and I've gotten to meet people like you on amazing things like this and other, the conversation panel that we were on. There's been a lot of these amazing panels and creative ways that people are making creation happen. And I've felt very lucky to be included in a lot of these projects. And so I've still felt like I've been working and doing things and meeting people and collaborating. So yeah, I'm doing well, all things considered. And we're getting to the final stretch. I you can see the light at the end of the tunnel now. So fingers crossed.
Definitely, with the few vaccines that we have available now, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel as well. And I'm so glad to hear that your family's okay, because that is always a concern. You never know what someone's situation is. So I'm really glad to hear that. And it's funny that you talk about not having time with your boyfriend, because I felt the same way with Austin and I. There were so many years where he would be on tour and I'd be at home, or I would be on tour and he would be home, or we would both be on tour. And we just didn't really get a chance to settle in and spend time together. And we kept deciding, okay, this is the year where we will spend time together. But then one of us would book something amazing and you can't say no. And
you can't say no. I know. It's such a double-edged sword, because you want, and I'm so grateful that my boyfriend is so supportive, and I am of his career as well. Like, he spent half the year in Europe with his band Brass Against last year, just touring Europe. And, I'm like, I want that for you. I want your music to be heard. I want you to get to do these things that we as artists want to do. But man, I miss you. But we've also gotten really good at like making long distance work. We talk every day. You always, whoever's going to bed first always at least sends a text message to say I'm going to bed so that the other person can, say goodnight. But it's been so nice to, get to spend time with your partner this year. And, I feel horrible for the people where it's gone the opposite way. So I'm, again, very grateful that it wasn't we spent a year together and now I think I don't want to do this anymore. So I was like, great, this is a perfect test of spending a lot of consolidated time together in an apartment in New York City.
Absolutely. It's always a great thing when you discover that you actually do like each other.
I know. He's actually like out at a studio today doing like in-person recording stuff. And we were like, okay, well, bye. I'll miss you. Like, what? And, he had like just little various gigs. If we spend, just a little bit of time apart now, we're like, it's so quiet. I don't know what to do with myself. I guess I'll just watch some TV or something. It's weird. I'm like, I'm suddenly very dependent on your company. I'm so glad that I still love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to hear that. Our we have a dog, Bella, and she has become very attached during this time. And
oh my gosh,
I've gotten a couple of gigs that I've had to do outside of the house, and Austin will send me like photos of her waiting by the door, and it's horrible because I know I'm not going to be back for like 4 hours or something, but she's
4 hours. You're like, I used to be gone for 4 months at a time, and now it's like 4 hours, and we're like, I don't know what to do with myself. That's so fun. It's so real though. It's going to be very strange going back to work. I'm very excited for it. Obviously, like we're all very excited to get to go back to work, but I feel like my energy level too, just doing one thing a day. If I do one thing a day, I'm like, ooh, that was a hard 1 hour Zoom call. Like what? Like I'm exhausted. And I'm like, what is this? How are we going to do this? I'm not sure, but we'll find out. I think everyone's going to be.
You won't be alone. And that'll be the thing, is that we can all come together and talk about, oh my God, are you exhausted? Because I've been going to bed at 10:30. And what's going to happen now?
Who am I? I'll get tired so early and I'm like, a year ago, this was, the middle of Act 1. What am I doing? I can't like be tired. Like we're in intermission. We still have an act to go. Like how? Yeah, it's going to be an interesting adjustment period to shift back. But I think it's a challenge. Everyone's like, bring it on. I'm ready. I'm ready to drink all the coffee in the world.
Definitely. We're adaptable. That's why we do what we do.
Exactly.
So I really want to chat about your time with The Little Mermaid for a few reasons. I want to chat about it just because it's amazing. Congratulations to you for booking that tour and getting to go around the country as Little Mermaid. Also, it doesn't look like the easiest of shows. So kudos to you for pulling that off, being in the air all the time and just all the things. I imagine that your core must have been the most solid.
My gosh. Yes. I was like, by the end of that year, I was like, I have like abs. I'm like really strong now and like just the strength, and then 3 days after tour was done, it was just like, I was like, really? Really? It just like softened back up to a nice, healthy, happy tummy. And I was like, cool. That went quickly. Like 3 days later, I was like, these back to my old clothes. But it was definitely a very aerobic show with the flying. Glenn Cassell, who was the director, got hired to sort of figure out why The Little Mermaid on Broadway didn't do as well as they wanted it to, as like something like The Lion King, which is obviously still very successful. And they're like, why didn't Mermaid have that same sort of thing? So they used him to sort of rework it. He also worked on Hunchback. He's like Disney's fix-it guy. And he was like, well, it's not as magical as you would want the Little Mermaid to be. You have, half the show takes place underwater. We can do so much more than, in the Broadway one, they were skating, which still it looked very cool and she was gliding and swimming. But he was like, I want to turn the whole space into the deep sea because she lives under the sea. So they added the Foy system and we were flying. And yeah, it was a very intense exercise year. It was fun though. And like all of the videos online, I just cringe whenever I see them. Like if someone tags me in something, I see what it is and I can't watch it anymore. It was, all during tech at the beginning of the process. So people are like, oh, she sounds so labored. And I was like, I was labored. We were in tech and I was learning how to fly and hang from my stomach. And like to swim across the stage, you have to then use your core to, because you're just sitting in a harness. So then to swim sideways, you have to like push yourself down and hold yourself there as it's dragging you. Otherwise I would just be doing this back and forth, which would be really fun, but not very cool looking. So it was really hard. And so all the videos, I'm like, I love seeing that as here's where I started. And I, got much more comfortable and it got a lot easier. And I found my way through it. But I see those videos and I'm like, oof, girl, she was working hard. She was working hard. And it shows and sounds like it. But, that's the beautiful thing about theater, right? You get to perfect it and do it. I never got bored of doing it. I never got tired. I was learning things constantly. It's the longest I've done a show, like a run of a show. And yeah, I was like, am I going to get so sick of being a Disney princess for a year? And I was like, no, I found so many more interesting things about her and, wanted to dig deeper. So it wasn't just, Vaseline on the teeth, sort of smiling through the whole thing. It's just like, no, she's an individual who doesn't feel like she fits in her environment and no one understands her. And she tries to figure out where she does belong. And I think that's something that's so relatable to people of all ages and races and, identities. So I was like, this is actually a very important message if we don't let it just be about like fun and glitter and, sparkles and bubbles. So it was a really fun challenge to do for a year.
Absolutely. I can imagine that it was life-changing,
It was.
I can feel you totally on that, like building up your endurance, because when I first started in The Lion King, I had to get adjusted to the corset and the weight of the corset and how constrictive it can be around the diaphragm. And I got used to it. But if someone had been capturing my first few rehearsals or even my first few performances with video, I would not want to see that. Like, I do not need to be reminded of that
how hard it was
at all. And I got so used to my endurance and getting used to the show that when I went on vacation once for 2 months, not for 2 months, for 2 weeks, I went on a 2-week vacation. 2 months, yeah. I went on a 2-week vacation. And I did not work out at all. And I thought that I could just come back and jump into my show. And that first show,
you like fall over.
Oh my God, I probably sounded like a drowning pig. Like, it was awful. It was terrible. So I feel you. I feel you on so many levels.
But then isn't it so fun to be like, man, I was that strong. To make something that difficult that you take 2 weeks off of something that's so ingrained in your body like that. Like, oh, it's like riding a bike. I'll just get back on and ride my bike. And it's like, absolutely not. Your body is like, no, absolutely not. It's crazy. But then to think, when you are doing it and you're in the run of your show and it becomes easy, like, so much power. It's really, I was like, wow. Anytime we took, like a week off or something, and then I would come back and I was like, whoo, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. How do I breathe? How do I sing? I'm hanging from my seat. How do I do this? And then it gets fun again. You're like, I'm strong. I can do anything. I can do musical theater. Take that, bodybuilders.
Did you find that actually, I'm curious, where did you audition for it? Because I know you're from Seattle. Had you already moved to New York and did you audition in New York?
I had already moved to New York. I'd been in New York for uh like 4 or 5 years maybe. And um I had done a reading for a new musical with the director Glenn, and he doing that show, he was like, "Oh," and he had already been working on Mermaid. He had done a couple of like mini tours in a paper mill playhouse, and um, they were still working on it. And he was like, "I see like an Ariel in her," so he kind of like ticked that away in the back of his mind. And so when The Little Mermaid came up, they had auditions in Seattle because it started in Seattle with the Fifth Avenue Theater as the first producing company for the first half of tour. And it was going to be running in Seattle for a month over their Christmas season. So they were like, well, we don't want to just have a whole like New York cast come in because, a lot of Seattle pride, and Seattle has so much talent. And they were like, we want to keep some Seattle faces and names in these title roles. We don't want to have, someone that our audiences don't know come in for this. And Glenn was like, wait a minute, I know someone from Seattle. There's this girl that I met in New York named Diana Huey. And they're like, Diana, we know Diana. I'd worked there a ton and when I lived in Seattle, and so they had me doing an audition in New York, and I went to, Ripley or Pearl or something. And I remember, it's so embarrassing. I remember standing at the door waiting to go in, and the monitor at the audition, I kind of cracked the joke of like, well, I'm not going to book this. Like, I'm not going to get cast as Ariel because maybe if it was just a sit down production, but I was like, they're not going to want to take an Asian girl and throw her around the whole country for a year on tour. They're not going to do that. And he was like, why not? Like, she's a mermaid. Why does it matter? And I was like, oh, right. Okay. Thank you. Okay, good. But I was just excited to go into a room and sing Part of Your World, a song that, every kid in our age group grew up singing and, just pretended to be Ariel. And I was like, I get to do this for 3 minutes. For 3 minutes, I get to be Ariel. And they have to at least hopefully pretend to watch. Hopefully it's not one of those auditions where they're like,
eating a sandwich.
Yeah, just doing their Sudoku. And you're like, oh, should I go? So yeah, I did the audition, and then I got a call like a week later. And it was, I was in like a downstairs basement changing room of maybe like a Rainbow like clothing store, like, like a cheap kind of discount shopping thing where I was like, well, I'm in Midtown, so let me just see if they can get a new tank top or so. I don't know, and I'm like in this basement, so I didn't get service, and so I get this voicemail from my agent saying that I booked it, and I'm like, standing with no pants on or something, like in this basement changing room in New York. And I was just like, wow, I'm all alone in this basement and I can't tell anybody that my life I just booked my dream job. I can't believe it. But yeah, so the audition was in New York, but it definitely had strong ties to being from Seattle. So I was very, very lucky to be able to tick those boxes. And yeah, and then I got to go home for Christmas and the holidays, and it was amazing. And a lot of the ensemble and a lot of the cast was made up of Seattle people. So I got to, be reunited with my original Seattle tribe and the people that I fell in love with theater with. So it was really special.
That is so awesome that you got to do what you said, your dream role, and then you're in your hometown and your family gets to be there. You get to be supported the entire time, which is amazing. It doesn't always happen that way.
I know. I had someone come to every single show for that like month sit down in Seattle. People that I hadn't seen in decades, like, friends from childhood that I hadn't seen, and they're like, I'm coming to see you in The Little Mermaid, or people at the stage door, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember you from, was it 5th grade? Like, it's like, what is happening? So I had someone at every single show. There were lots of backstage tours, and lots of, I had to do the stage door to see people every single show. It was amazing. I was like, this is the most incredible homecoming that I could ever ask for.
That is so awesome. I can actually when you mentioned that you were like, they're not going to cast me, I've experienced that feeling too. I've been called into auditions and thought, why am I here? Really though, why am I here?
Right.
And I don't know if it's a mixture of what society tells us or just our personal experiences have taught us that it usually goes to a white girl or a person, a non-melanated person. And so it's sometimes you're already shooting yourself in the foot before you get in the room, and maybe you just want to enjoy the audition and you just want to sing this lovely song from your childhood, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking maybe you're wasting your time. And I hate that. And I don't know what we can do to start changing that mindset. I know that casting needs to change so that we can feel, and that the young girls and guys and girls coming after us can feel like their efforts are not in vain. I was doing a Q&A with Broadway Plus recently, and there was this young actor on named Roman Banks, and he was the first Black Evan Hansen. And he got into the show as one of the covers and then went on and he became the first Black actor to ever perform that role. And he talked about when the show came out, and he's young, like he left college to do this role.
Oh my goodness.
When he first heard about Dear Evan Hansen in high school, which makes me laugh because anyway, but it's cute and it's fun. But he first heard about Dear Evan Hansen and he talks about how he connected so much with Evan. He said, I'm an Evan, and when he went to the open call, there were only 5 people of color in line for Evan. Because, it could be the voice part, but I think it has to do with you just already make the decision, I'm not going to book this role. Why should I even try?
Why should I be here? Yeah.
It was I felt so hopeful seeing that he didn't let that hold him back and that he went in with his sights on what he thought was the best role for him.
Yeah. I mean, after having the experience that I had and then facing all of the racism that I faced from people just touring and about being Asian and playing Ariel. And then I think back, I thought, well, I did it too. I did it first. I was the first one to say, I can't, Asian. Like I was the first one to do it. And I did it to myself. And it really was like an eye-opening experience for me of, I can't fault anyone else for saying it if I said it about myself. So I need to change my own dialogue and how I approach an audition or how I approach these opportunities or how I approach a role, and not, categorize myself like that. And, I hope that I can continue to practice that lesson and like continue learning from that and like show up for that call that you're like, why am I here? And hope that, it's because you're here, like because I am here, not because of what I look like, but because of who I am and what I can do and what I bring to this role. And so hopefully, I mean, that's, the dream, right? That is how things start going when we all get back. I think this has been a very thought-provoking year, and there's been a lot of very needed discussion and reevaluation. So I do hope that when we get back into it, that this will be a thing of more of the past, and people will be like, wait, why would you not go to an audition? Like, because of the color of your skin, like, but you can sing it or you could act it or you can dance it or whatever it is, why would you not go? Did you want it? You wanted it? Why didn't you go? And it's like, well, so I hope that becomes like the conversation of the past, like, oh, I walked uphill both ways in the snow when I was your age going to school, like I want it to be that conversation where people are like, yeah, we know, but that's not it doesn't apply anymore. So that's the hope. And that's so great that he, did that, because it's also so, I'm sure too, that feeling when you walk into an audition for a role that is typically white, cast as white, and you show up and you're like, what's up? I am the only person here that isn't what the cookie cutter, what you would assume the character to look like. And it's incredibly intimidating. Or if there's like the, 5 people in a huge call like that, it's like you feel very, very naked and very seen. And then if you don't do it perfectly, if you're not like 110% perfect for this, and you give not a great audition, it's so much more embarrassing and like so much more, it just feels it's horrible, right? I had that experience where I like, didn't do so well in a callback in like the dance call, and it was me and a bunch of white girls, and the breakdown for the character described her to be white basically 3 different ways in that one little paragraph. And I was like, I was like asking my agents, like, should I go in for this? Because I just don't want, if they're not going to look at me, if they want her to be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Midwestern girl, great, but I'm not that. So if that's what they want, then that's not what I'm going to give them. So should I be going? And they're like, oh, I didn't even notice that. That's old language. It's old, like, yeah. And, it's fine. It's fine. So just go in, and, they meant to update that or something. So I was like, okay. And then it stayed that way the whole time. And then I get to the call, and I'm the only, 5-foot Asian girl with these beautiful dancers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the actor, like the nightmare that I have. And I wake up in a sweat and I'm living it. And then, so it's so hard to get through that. And then when I didn't do the combination perfectly, it was just like, so why is that one here? Like, what is she doing here? I thought she must obviously have been like really ferocious, but I was like,
and then
like
the other fear, the other fear too, is that you're misrepresenting everyone else that looks like you,
right?
As if that's on your shoulders to represent yourself so well that next time they'll call more of us in. And I can't take that on, even though I do.
We do. It's, it's been such an interesting year. And I was in this workshop for a new musical, and they started it with a diversity, like inclusion and anti-racism workshop. And they were like, it's not mandatory. And I think most everyone showed up. And there were just so many interesting things that they were even talking about how, we as the hierarchy, we as the actors are like at the bottom of the totem pole.
Absolutely.
Like the dirt holding the totem pole in the ground, right? Like we feel so powerless to say no, or to, call something out, or to say anything other than like, yes, 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 and just yes, and through all of it, right? And that's something that, at least in this diversity workshop, they were really talking about, like moving forward in theater processes, and how this is going to be like a conversation that happens at the first day of every rehearsal, and the just sort of reallocating where the power lies so that it's more communal and like a team. And I'm hoping that, because it's so much to take on, to be like, oh, well, if I'm the only Asian girl and then I mess up, then they're going to be like, oh yeah, we took a risk. We were like, oh, let's see if maybe we can add in a little bit of, so let's just stick with what we do. And it's like, I am not the representative of every person on this planet. So hopefully, we can speak up. And I wish that I never know how it works in an audition, but I wanted to just go up to them and say, I'm incredibly nervous, and I just botched that, and I know I botched that, and I know I can do it. It's that hard line where you don't want to sound like you're begging, but I was so mad at myself because I was like, I could do that combination. I just got so in my head with everything. And I felt defeated the second I walked in before I even did anything. I just looked around and I went, oh crap, So I, man, I hope that there is the sort of thing where you can go up and talk to the creatives and say, I gave you that was my that was my dance call. And here, and I don't know, when you just want to say like, I can do better.
Yeah.
I can. And I don't know if it's like the most appropriate thing to go up to someone and be like, I can do better. I promise. You don't want to go into an audition and be like, I have a cold. And so if I mess up, that's why, you don't ever do that. But man, there are just those times where I wish that we felt like we could have open communication with people. Aren't we all like, we're applying to work together. And so why shouldn't I be able to then communicate with you my truth? Like, hey, that wasn't the best, but I do know I could do it. And I know that I take an extra day, but if this were rehearsal and I got to go home and think on this for a second and do it in my own time, not with the pressure of 5, 6, 7, 8, go, I can do it. I could do it.
I know that
so
too.
Hard.
Austin talks a lot because Austin, my husband, he sits on the other side of the table quite a lot, and as a music director, and he says that they always choose the hardest bits, or just to put the pressure cooker on people, just to see if they can handle it, and see if if push comes to shove, and this actor does handle it well. Great, but maybe they don't. And how do they handle those mess ups, or how do they handle the pressure, and are they going to be good to work with? And I think that's the fear, that if you do say that I have a cold, they're going to be like, oh my God, they're difficult,
excuses,
or or excuses,
yeah.
and you just have that small window to make an impression. And you just want it to be the best parts of yourself. I have gone into auditions and cursed by accident. And, and then I swear to you, that casting director didn't call me in for 5 years.
Are you kidding?
No, not kidding.
Okay, but also like maybe if you were cursing at them, but in what world in the theater, is it not everyday conversation where it's a colorful room,
it's
always,
a colorful room. It is.
I'm just like, that's garbage. That's garbage. I'm like, that it's not like you were applying to, work at a church or work with children.
Right.
It's like, I'm auditioning for a musical or for a theater. And
yeah, I think maybe she might have been a bit of a prude, but it's okay. It's fine. I'm fine.
Oh man, that's horrible. I would be in I don't know. It's hard. It just gets ingrained. It is the language of, of the business. It's very
very expressive, very colorful,
it's very
expressive, and honest.
Yes. Yeah. And honest.
Yeah. I don't even remember why I cursed, but in the moment it felt right. And then afterwards I kept overthinking it. And then of course, when I didn't get called in ever again, I thought, oh, okay. Yeah, that's what happened. All right. Moving on. But you know what? I don't know. I think when I was thinking about what you said about, should we say something? I don't know. If we had an insight into the casting director's brain, then we would know. And I would love that. Like if I had time to intern at a casting office, and if they had time for me to be there, I would do it, because you could learn so much about why they operate the way they do. I imagine that they're constantly busy, and that's why everything's so last minute and a little clipped and everything. And when you luck out with a casting director who's actually really kind and gracious and gives you a moment and everything, it's really lovely. But I imagine, because the culture of it seems to be very last minute and somewhat difficult, I think that they must be very busy.
Yeah.
I just want to intern so that I can understand what's happening. The closest I got was being a reader, but even still, I still don't know.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah. I've had friends that have they're like, oh man, just sitting in the room when you leave and the door shuts, they were like, I learned a lot. And I'm very curious about that. Did you like hear a lot of things?
I
Did you get the inside scoop?
So I was in a few rooms where they asked me to leave after every oh my gosh, I'm forgetting my words, actor. After every actor left. But what I learned was that how someone enters a room is really important, and making eye contact, and even the simplest things like if casting introduces everyone behind the table, like really take a moment and take that in. And those are things that I didn't do. I would go in, I'm ready and I'm
Yeah.
focused, and I'm not really being a human being. And what was interesting being a reader is you see people walk in over and over and over again, and you can tell within seconds who's confident, who's self-assured, who's ready, who's going to, be easy to work with. You can kind of tell. And with one director, he told me, he said, he let me ask him questions. I can't believe he let me do that. But I got to ask him questions in between people. And he said, I know within 10 seconds if I want to work with someone. Now, his casting process is a little different. He's very precise about who he'll work with. And then because they're already in the room, he's decided that they know how to do their craft because they're called in the room. But he looks for, who do I want to work with? Who do I want to who do I want to sit and have coffee with? That's what he cares about.
That's what I tell like any students that I talk to. I'm like, everyone is talented. Everyone has something to bring to the table. So you have to just be your best self, be kind to everyone, acknowledge everyone, know everyone. Because that's what's going to get you working.
Yes.
If people want to work with you, because we get to play, and you don't want to play with someone you don't like. You don't want to play with someone that's a jerk. You want to, kids, be nice to everybody.
Yes.
Treat people the way you want to be treated. It's like, it all goes back to kindergarten. Like, if we could just treat people the way we want to be treated. Would you like it if someone did this to you? No? Then okay, then don't do it to them.
Mm-hmm. It's that simple. We forget it though, especially in an environment that is so competitive. Because just because it's competitive, it doesn't mean it has to get nasty or unkind. But it can be. It's not always, but it can be. And, it's livelihoods and reputations at stake. And, I just want that next notch in my career. We can get very focused on that and lose sight of just, hey, these are my fellow actors. They're going through the same thing I'm going through. How can I support you in this audition waiting room?
Yeah. Yep.
I have been in some waiting rooms where the dancers are stretching and the singers are humming, and I am just like, uncomfortable.
Help! Can we all just be friends? Like, if we all book this together, we're all going to be best friends. So let's start now. Like, you immediately become friends with, like, is it like, now we all got a gold star. We all got an A, so we can all be like, I can acknowledge you now because we are the same. Like, what is it? But I hate that energy. I hate it when it's like that. Nothing makes me feel better than when I'm at an audition and everyone is just, kind, and we're all getting along and sharing things, passing pages or whatever it is, or just being nice to each other. It's so helpful. I've made friends from auditions where people are like, oh, how do you guys know each other? And we're like, Pearl, like the hallway. I don't know. We've like never worked together. We just see each other at auditions and we've become friends. And I'm like, that's the way it should be. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all, trying to make art. We're trying to have fun and tell stories. And, it's not like I don't know.
No, it's true. And we're all, like you said, at the bottom, we're all the dirt that the totem pole is in, And so we're very replaceable. And so we might as well treat each other with kindness, because the rest of this community can be difficult. It can be challenging. So we might as well be kind to each other. All of us at bottom dwellers down here.
But it's so true. Isn't it like so much nicer to enjoy yourself at the audition versus being like stressed out and miserable and, like that New York, when you're walking and you just immediately like mean mug and you stare down at the ground, you walk as fast as you can, even though you're like, I'm killing an hour, but I'm going to still walk as fast as I can down the street. And like, gosh, what a miserable way to live, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, why not take this opportunity to hang out with people and have fun and talk and learn and crack a joke and then maybe go get a coffee and walk to the train together. It's like I don't know. I've had a lot of I don't know, the Asian American musical theater community in particular is very super like supportive and wonderful, and like you get to, it's like once you do one Miss Saigon, you know everyone, and or it's at least 1 degree of separation. And so I, at least when I get those calls where there's a lot of Asian people or like diversity calls, which but I'm like, well, at least I'm gonna go see all my friends today. Bye. Like going to the audition. I'm gonna go hang out with people, and then we're gonna go get barbecue. It's like I don't know. I just think it's so much better. And it makes it so it then you walk into the room and you're not coming from this position, but you're like coming from
And up
just
and high.
chatting and
Yeah.
having fun, and being like, oh, right, this is fun. This is fun. Theater is fun. And like working with other artists is fun. And connecting with people is fun. This is what I like to do.
Absolutely. I'm curious too, when you had that experience of being the only Asian girl in this dance call. I've experienced where I'm the only Black girl in the audition room. And I think sometimes colorism comes into play in my head too, because I'm thinking, well, they may cast a Black girl, but she's not going to be this shade, or, and that's troubling because I don't want to feel this competitive nature with my other Black fellow actresses.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I feel competitive, but I am aware that colorism plays a role. And I'm aware of that if they want to diversify a cast, that they go for what they can see. So maybe even if I'm in the audition room with a few light-skinned Black girls, they may choose someone my shade just because from the back of the house you can tell, oh, there's a Black girl on stage, which isn't fair. And we just have a long way to go. But have you, in your experience, even in Seattle or New York or DC, where you've auditioned and worked, have you found that you've had to take on the quote unquote token role in a show?
I mean, yeah, especially at the beginning, I feel more, I was thinking through this, and I've been relatively lucky, and because especially in the beginning, because I am 5 feet tall, and because I am Asian, and because I am definitely a stronger singer, actor versus dancer. Not to just out myself, I will work very hard and I will get it. But as far as being in the ensemble of a show, it's like I wasn't always in the ensemble. I'm not like ensemble material for a lot of shows, and a lot of shows that are typically white. So it's if I was in the ensemble of the local production of Oklahoma, people might be like, huh, so I don't know, but I primarily would play like a character, but there are times too where I was like in a show or an ensemble or anything where I'm like, oh, I see what I am. Like I'm the check mark on the diversity. Not sure if I wasn't Asian, if I would have booked this job. Like maybe it is. And so, it goes both ways where I'm like, oh, I got this because I bring some color into the company and it looks good for whoever. And I can't really complain because I got the job. I feel like that was a conversation I had with myself a lot when I was younger and when I was still in Seattle. And I think that I think that things have gotten better, but I'm like you said, there's still a long ways to go. But yeah, definitely. And I feel it a lot too. I feel even more so in auditions where, you're sort of like, oh, okay, now it can be like, it was a diverse call. It was an open call. It was open-minded. we just picked, we cast it based off of who we wanted that's right for the role or our mission or whatever. But you're like, we had an open call for everybody because we had that Asian girl there, and it's like,
Yeah.
cool. And I feel like I feel that more so in the audition room. And then I go, or is it that I'm terrible at auditioning, and so it's not that it's just that I'm not booking the jobs because I'm not booking the jobs. I mean, then you like spiral and you go around. But I've definitely been the only or one of the only few people of color in many an audition.
Yes.
And I feel it. And I feel it too, like you were saying, like within 10 seconds, like as soon as I walk in the room, and when they're like, nope. And when they're just like, nope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I haven't even said hello. Like I opened the door and they look at you and then they're like, and you're like, damn, like what
how did I lose them? What happened?
What did I do? And it's like, oh, it's me. Cool.
But I think too, there is value in what you said earlier about not trying to decide why it's not you. And
Right.
and I need to do that too. Deciding, oh, they won't book me because of my race. And so, yeah, that may mean, okay, they didn't book me because I didn't sing it well or act it well or dance it well. Those could be on the table too, but at least I have more control over that and bettering those parts of myself. You have no control over your height, your race. And so what are we going to do with that? And I know it's a mental game of figuring out how to navigate through this and stay motivated and positive and think the best of people and hope for the best of people. But it's good to have conversations like this because then you're not alone. And here we are, two actresses, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different heights. And here we're having this conversation about something we've both felt very acutely in the audition room.
I think it does help to have these conversations and have them openly so that everyone, because I'm sure everyone feels this way, even if you are, a beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed Southern belle, I'm there, whatever it is, just that feeling of utter self-loathing or a failure or, self-doubt. And, we all get no's and we all wonder, what did I do wrong? Is it me? Is it just this gig? Is it them? Is it that I think it's so helpful to have conversations about, these processes, and because you get more no's than yes typically. And it's so hard to kind of keep going. And yeah, there's no point in trying to control something you can't control. And having these conversations helps bring the light to, this whole other side for the people that do feel, like people of color or whatever it is that you feel like you're an other, to, I don't know, for casting to now be more aware of this conversation that we've all been having forever, that they're like, oh, it's just, I think it's so important. I don't know, why don't we, and again, too, with that dance call, I'm like, why can't I just talk to you? Are we not people? Are we not both artists? Are we not like both wanting to work on this one thing together? So why can't we have these open conversations and make it not so, other and quiet and, just, okay, I'm going to smile. Yes. And then I'll go home and cry. It's like, no, why can't I just talk to you? And why can't we all work together and be a community? Because that's what this industry is or should be. So, yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to get back to auditioning now. We will practice the art of just self-love, self-acceptance, openness, kindness to others. And I mean, there is also, just being grateful to be in the room, even if you're going to get a no, even if you don't feel like you're going to book it. Like, you never know. I got Mermaid from a director that worked with me in a reading, and so you never know where one door opens, another one closes, and another, all the doors. There's so many doors.
There's so many
opening and closing
doors.
all the time. And, it's 1 degree of separation for pretty much everybody in this industry. So it is, every opportunity is hopefully a good one. But it would be really nice for these conversations to continue and for it to not be such a feeling of a stigma anymore, or like a self shame, like secret quiet shame that
Absolutely. I think
it's
we all
terrible.
struggle with the ups and downs of being an actor, no matter who we
Mhm.
are, what we look like, how successful we are. It
Mhm.
happens on all the levels, I think, because I'm experiencing some of the same feelings I felt when I first started out. So that means that there, even however you move along the trajectory, there's still going to be whatever you've been feeling along the way.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what your thoughts are on what diversity looks like. So, for example, we've been having all these conversations about diversity and inclusion. Even Actors Equity has at the bottom of every call that we don't discriminate and yada yada yada. But what really does diversity look like? Because Austin and I were having this conversation about casting and how there's been so much diversity in casting when it comes to race. But then is there diversity much when it comes to age or weight or ableism? And so I'm curious what your thoughts on are. What does a diverse world look like when we talk about the future of casting?
Yeah. I mean, shouldn't it look like walking into a coffee shop in New York or walking into that, CVS, walking on the street, just what we see? We're not all, at least 5'7" and legs to our ears. And, that's not reality. And that's not representation of us as people, as humans. We're all different. And I do that is one thing that was really beautiful. I didn't get to see it, but the revival of Oklahoma, I love that they had, that was, felt so much more diverse, and having Allie in her in a wheelchair. And I was just like, yes, what about the other able bodies? Yes. Or the deaf production of Spring Awakening at Deaf West, things like that, are, I can't wait for that to be less mind-blowingly oh, wow. I want that to be what you see. I love yeah, I saw a production of Hunchback of Notre Dame and at the Fifth Avenue Theater, and Josh Paris, who was playing Quasimodo, he's a deaf actor. He also did Melchior in the Deaf West production of Spring Awakening. So he's this amazing deaf actor, and it was the most moving thing I've seen in probably a top 3 in my whole life. Seeing him play Quasimodo, and then there was another actor who was his singing voice, who spoke for him, who sang for him while Josh signed. And they were like, well, also, he's lived his whole life in this bell tower, and I think in the original story, Quasimodo is partially deaf because he's living in a bell tower. But seeing this other performance and the way that Josh communicated to the audience, I mean, I was just weeping the whole time. It was incredible. And I was like, wow, why can't I want to see more things like this with people that get to show show themselves, and to show another way of that art can be, another form, so beautifully. And I want to see more of that. I want my mind to be blown. When then hopefully it'll be like, oh, well, it's so boring. Everyone is, completely able-bodied in this production, and,
and beautiful, and
and beautiful, and all, they all, you can't tell who's who anymore if you're 3 rows back, because they're all wearing the same wigs, and similar costumes or whatever. It's it's so much more interesting and beautiful and celebratory and so much more real. I was like, I'm watching Hunchback of Notre Dame, and it's one of the most real things one of the most real performances I've ever seen. How, it's a Disney show, and it's fiction. It was beautiful. So I hope that that's more normal. And I love seeing, diverse families in shows, because there are diverse families. I am of a diverse family. I'm full-blooded Japanese. I was born in Japan. but I was adopted as a baby. And my adoptive parents, my mom is Japanese, born and raised in Japan, and my dad is from North Carolina. And he's like 6'1", Southern white man, living in Seattle. So his accent isn't there so much anymore, except for when he says like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But so I grew up in a multicultural family. I grew up, with a white dad and an Asian mom and an Asian sister. And that was normal for me. So growing up too, I didn't really identify myself by my race. I just identified as a person, and it took a while. I mean, a very long while for me to be like, oh, I see. I'm not, oh, okay, because I just was me, and I didn't realize that I was supposed to also be something else, or that I wasn't something else. And yeah, I just hope that we continue to see more diversity in all of the ways, and for us to just, especially for theater, it's like, hi, it's storytelling. We get to set and create this world with these characters, and it can be anything we want it to be. So if we're going to say the mom is Black, the dad is Asian, the kid is white, and the brother is purple, like, great. Okay, great. So now we've set the stage. Tell me this story. Let's go. Take me there.
Yeah, take us to the Whitney Houston and Brandy Cinderella. Nobody was complaining. It was fantastic.
Yes.
It's make-believe anyway. I understand it when the story requires it.
Yes.
But there's so many times where that's been being bent. Look at Hamilton. So does the story require it, or are we too close-minded and we're not allowing the story to require whatever we want it to require?
Right.
Thank you so much for your open and candid views on diversity in this chat. I've learned so much about you, and I hope that our viewers and listeners get to see some insight into what it's like, and that they that we all can begin to change things in a way that makes it more inclusive and lovely and supportive the way it should be, because this is an art form, and creativity should always be handled with care and grace and kindness. We are moving into our stage door round, but before we move into it, I want to ask you, would you like to stay on for the curtain call?
Oh, absolutely. I haven't done a curtain call in a year.
Well, you will be doing one this afternoon. Okay, so here I just have 4 questions for you, and the last one is a silly question that I ask everyone. So get ready for that one. Okay, so the first one is dressing room must-haves.
Ooh, dressing room must-haves. I love to have like space for things. Like I love to get like it's so exciting to, go to the local, if it's like a regional show and you're like, oh, I don't have all of my stuff. So I'm going to go to the local TJ Maxx or Marshalls or something and buy that makeup brush holder and like kind of like organize everything just to have their own place. I also love to have as much water as possible. Possibly a Pedialyte, which also helps with the hydration, or those little steamers that you can just like plug in with a water bottle, something small. And I do always love having some photos of the people I love to just sort of ground me and make me feel at home.
Yeah, your support from afar.
Yes.
Okay, second question. The most bizarre mishap that you've had in a show. This might be too broad. So do you want, because I'm like, ooh, this. Did you have a mishap in Miss Saigon?
Yeah. I, the first time I've done it twice, but when I did it at the Signature Theater in DC, we had this amazing looking metal grated set. And so there were all these grates and like lights and smoke and, all these cool things. And when the dancers are like banging on it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is so immersive. It was like an immersive production. And it was very painful on the knees though. Cause when you're kneeling on metal grates, that can start to be a problem. And so I was walking to my place to finish off Act 1 and saying, I'd give my life for you. And I'm like walking backstage and all of a sudden my knee just feels like it exploded, and I was like, huh! And then I was like, okay. And I was going to grab my kid, my Tam, and the kid wrangler looked at me and she was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. And I like took another step and my knee just had just burst, like some like the joint or something. But I had, Saigon, the whole thing is done with music. So I can't be like, stall, do an improv scene, orchestra and everyone on stage. So I just grabbed my kid and like hobble ran on stage with him and finished off act one. And then for the rest of the run, I had like some pretty bum knees, and I would have to get like fireman carried. We would exit the stage and have to run around the back of the audience and come back to the other side of the stage. And because it was like this immersive theater, and it's like we would walk off stage, and then my friend Chris would just just hurl me up in his arms and just run around the stage. And so I was like, I have my own personal escort. I'm being like fireman carried around the audience backstage. But yeah, that was crazy. Or my toenails, this is really gross, but kept getting caught in the grate as well.
Oh.
So I'd be like kneeling. And then I had these open-toed shoes for the first half of the run until this happened twice. And then we were like, let's change her shoes. But my toe would get caught in the grate and my nail like half ripped off. And then we had this giant airplane wing. They got like an actual airplane wing that we walk up at the end of act one. And it's, all the everyone's fleeing and we're walking up this airplane wing. The sun's going down. It's that iconic picture of every Saigon with like the sun and, the engineer Kim and Tam, they're all holding hands and she's looking over her shoulder. So I'm like walking up the wing, but then like trying to drag one of the refugee blankets to like clean up the trail of blood. That's just like, and I was like, I get backstage and I was like, I'm so sorry. I just bled everywhere. I just bled all across. It's all over the stage. It's up the airplane wing and it's all over this blanket.
Oh,
sorry. Like, so, weird mishaps. Like, I guess those are injury mishaps, but you press on.
Oh yeah. Injury mishaps. What can you do? You can't, they are unplanned. Well, every mishap is unplanned, but an injury mishap, you really have to recover. And it sounds like you're really good at recovering from being injured on stage and finishing the show. You're a trooper. Oh my God. So this one is not the simplest because it might take you some time to figure out who inspires you, but who inspires you?
I mean, it's such a basic Asian girl answer, but Lea Salonga was kind of like the OG Asian representation. And, Princess Jasmine's singing voice, which is the one that when I was little, I just mimicked. I just, like choir sang, just mimicked exactly the way that she sang and tried to sound exactly like her. I did that with all the Disney princesses, but Jasmine was my favorite because she had, dark hair and was olive skin toned. And, I was like, hey, I kind of look like her. I mean, I don't, but with what I had, to look at, she was the closest that I had. And I remember, I just loved her. And then Mulan. But then it was her Eponine in Les Mis, which was just like revolutionary. And that was such you don't even bat an eye. You're just like, damn, she's phenomenal. Like
that
she
voice
is ferocious and just so skilled. She's just incredible. So I wrote like a paper, my college entrance paper on her. I love her. And I think she's just such a great role model of like good work ethic. My Prince Eric, the second half of tour was Eric Kunze, who did, 1 million shows with Leia, and he came into my dressing room one day and he was like, hey, did you see that Leia reposted about you on Facebook today? And I was like, no, because I'm not friends with Lea Salonga on Facebook to see what she's posting, Eric. What? And he's like, oh yeah, she like posted about like, yeah, Asian representation or whatever. And I was like, and I just was so excited. And I like ended up fangirl writing her a message, just being like, thank you so much. Like you are the reason that someone like me can be here. You're like one of the original pioneers that, broke casting norms and showed people that it doesn't matter, and no one bats an eye. And now everyone, then my senior year of high school, we did Les Mis, and everyone was like, well, obviously Diana's going to play Eponine because she's Asian. And like, who, you know what I mean? Like, what? No, they're friends. Like, she's not supposed to be Asian, but Leia stamped it so hard. And, everyone's like, well, of course. And then I got to do it. And it was like, I need to do musical theater for the rest of my life. That was like my turning point for me in high school as well. But yeah, she's just incredible. And she's the kindest person. And then I met her after Once on this Island. And we became friends on Facebook during all the racist stuff with Little Mermaid. And she was so wonderfully supportive and just kind. And so when I went to go see Once on this Island, I like messaged her and I was like, hey, I'm coming to see the show. I'm so excited. And she was like, oh, I'll throw your name on the list. Come meet me backstage. And I was like, huh? Okay. Like, we've chatted online, but I've never like met you in person, and I'm kind of freaking out. And when I met her, she was just like, oh God, it's so nice to finally meet you. And I was like, well, there are my brains. Like, I think my body's on the floor and my spirit is just floating away. I've just died. So she's incredible. And she's just such a badass, like still to this day. She's working, and everyone that's worked with her, they're like, she's just the most professional person too in the room. She's just like an A+ student across the board. So I'm like, okay, she's very aspirational.
Absolutely. Okay, so this last question is so
excited.
silly, so forgive me, but we ask everyone, okay? So in the cast of The Little Mermaid, who would you slap, who would you hug, and who would you take to lunch?
Who would I slap? Everybody. No, I'm just kidding. I hated all of those people. Who would I slap? I could honestly answer like both of my princes for all three, like just all three of those. But for the sake of answering this, let's say that I will slap my original Prince Eric, Matthew Casurgis, because he's just like one of my dearest friends. He was so wonderful to me on tour and took care of me. Like, I didn't have to do anything. He was just like there for me anytime I needed him, including like defrosting my refrigerator in a hotel. I was like, my fridge is like completely frozen over, and he came over with a hairdryer and was like blow drying it for me. But so I'll slap him because I love him so much. And I will hug Dane Stokinger, who was our chef Louis, who was also the first person to help talk me down when I started spiraling down the racist comments when I first saw them again. And he was walking by my dressing room at 5 to places or whatever, and she's like, oh, have a good show. And I was like, I need your help. I'm having a panic attack, and we're about to go on stage, and I'm filled with self-doubt. And he talked me down and got me back on my feet. So I have all the love in my heart for that man. So Dane Stokinger I would hug. And he's also like 6'17". Like, he's the largest human. So it's also just really, fun to hug him because I suddenly get to see this guy. And then take to lunch. Was that the last question? Mm-hmm. Ooh, I will go to lunch with my Ursulas. I had two, but I love them both. They were like so wonderful. And it's also just so fun to hear their stories of everything that they've done in their careers. And I would love to just listen to them talk all the time.
Ursula is probably my favorite. Like, when I think about the Disney villains, and just watching The Little Mermaid as an adult is a new experience, okay? Because the vavoomness of it all, and the makeup and the voice and the just everything, the drums going while she's walking. I mean, well, not walking, but swimming. It's everything.
Yeah, Ursula and her character, both Jennifer Allen and Meredith Inglesby were so brilliant and so different. That character, I was like, I want to play Ursula. She's so kooky and weird and like controlling and like such a psychopath. It's like, it's beautiful, and just that the material and just the power and just the chaos. I was like, I want it. So yeah, I would love to. Yeah, I would take one or both of them to lunch.
I love that. I love that. Diana, this has been so much fun. I can't wait to chat with you more in the curtain call. For those of you listening and watching, you can follow Diana on Instagram at Diana Huey, and we will see you at the curtain call. Austin, play us out. Woo!